was pure abuse and pure assault. I don't understand why you people think that I should sit here and cry my brains out for somebody who is going to kill me or rape me or beat me to death.
Aileen Wuornos. Hers was a killing spree that terrified the state of Florida and shocked the entire nation. Well, today in an exclusive jailhouse interview with Aileen, who is perhaps this country's first convicted female serial killer, you will hear her own words, her own justification. With us here in the studio today are several people whose lives are tied to her violent life in very varying ways. First, there is a childhood friend of Aileen's. There is also the daughter of one of her victims. The attorney she has hired to make sure that she gets the death penalty is also here, as is a police officer who believes that on at least one of those cases, Aileen Wuornos was framed. Now, before we talk with them, I'd like to show you a brief review of her brutal story. It began in late 1989 along Interstate 75 in Florida. Two scavengers came upon the body of a 51-year-old video store owner named Richard Mallory. He had been shot 4 times. Several months later, the nude body of 43-year-old David Spears was found. The construction worker had 6 bullets in him. Within the next, half year, 5 more victims in 6 months were discovered. 41-year-old Charles Karskadon, a rodeo worker, shot 9 times. Peter Sims, a 65-year-old missionary whose body was never found, just his car and a bloody handprint. 50-year-old Troy Burris, a truck driver, shot twice. Former Alabama Police Chief Dick Humphreys, age 60, dead of 7 gunshot wounds. And 60-year-old Gino Antonio, an unemployed waiter, shot 4 times while driving the highway in search of work. Fearful Florida motorists stopped picking up hitchhikers, and police issued composite sketches of 2 women they suspected were the killers. A tip led the cops to a rough-and-tumble biker bar in Daytona Beach, where a 35-year-old hooker named Aileen Wuornos was finally arrested. The other woman, Tyria Moore, Aileen's lesbian lover, became a star witness for the prosecution. In early 1992, Aileen, who is also known as Lee, was convicted of all 7 murders and was sentenced to die in Florida's electric chair. She has now been on death row ever since. Okay, what causes a woman to become a monster? What led to this grisly string of vicious killings? To try to understand how it happened, I traveled earlier this week to Broward Correctional Institute in Pembroke Pines in Florida. Before the interview even began, Aileen Wuornos had started to cry. When I asked her why she was crying, she said, "Because I know I'm going to die." Now, before we meet these studio guests and hear their first-hand accounts of their brushes with the life of this convicted 7-time murderer, here is the first part of my conversation with Aileen Wuornos.
Did you kill those 7 men?
I killed them. I didn't murder them.
Explain the difference to me.
Okay, murder is first-degree murder in intent, and killing is something you have to do in defense.
So you're saying that all 7 of those homicides were justifiable?
In my belief, yes.
I'm curious, if you believe that, why in the last several weeks have you been telling the courts that you don't want to participate in your own defense, that you want the death penalty?
I'm not going to allow them to put me in life in prison when I've been viciously raped, viciously tormented. I've suffered a great deal. I've been raped numerous times even before I got the gun. Why should I allow you to say, "Oh, we're sorry, we'll overturn the sentence and give you life"? That you're just putting me through torment again when I did something to keep myself alive. I'd rather die.
You'd rather die in the electric chair?
I would rather die in an electric chair or natural death than to live life in prison and be tormented continually the rest of my life when I don't deserve it. It's either acquittal or death, because what I did, anybody would have done.
But when you give the state a kind of defiant declaration, acquittal or death, don't you know what side the cards are likely to fall on?
Yeah, corruption, death.
We are told that a likely execution date would be around 1994 because she is not participating in any of her appeals. Before we see more of that interview, I'd like to introduce you to my studio guest. First, Dawn Botkins. Dawn, who knew Aileen Wuornos as a teenager, says that she has some eyewitness accounts of the dreadful home life that this woman had. Truly horrifying, Dawn?
Yeah, she had it terrible, actually. Mostly it was the teenagers at school. That's why she had to quit school. She couldn't even go to school. She had a baby when she was 13. She was raped by one of her father's friends, actually, is what it was. And they put her in an unweds home. When she got out of there, the kids knew that she had a baby, and all of a sudden she was nothing but a sleaze bag, and that's all they said to her. She had to quit school. Everybody treated her awful. Her even brother, her sister, let her go do prostitution and all that just for their cigarettes, where she slept out in the woods, and they got to stay in people's homes.
How did you know her? Why did you know her?
We both quit school at the same time. And I just chummed around with her during the day. Everybody else is at school.
Ever seen any violent propensities?
Yeah, lots of them. I've seen her when she's had parties and they've thrown her out of her own party, you know. When she's supplied everything, and it just didn't make any sense.
Any violence from her side, though?
No. Usually most of the time she had a bad temper. It was justified. It was one of the guys started something with her brother or her sister. She started a lot of stuff with her. It was mostly the other kids. They called her names and ragged her. That's why she had to quit school. She had slept in the woods. She slept in cars.
Brian Jarvis, a former police officer in Marion County, Florida, is a man who says that Wuornos was sold down the river by some of his own police colleagues, his former police colleagues. Dawn mentioned when Aileen was violent, it was usually justifiable. You believe that in at least one of the murders, the murder of Richard Mallory, who I guess was a convicted sex fiend, that Aileen was justified.
I believe that.
Brian, what do you believe?
Well, based upon information which was uncovered by another news source late last year, Richard Mallory did have a past of
Dateline
violence.
NBC.
That's correct.
It may be controversial to some, but they've done some fine work, and that was one of it.
And they found out some information about his past where he had actually been convicted of an attempted assault with an attempt to rape, and he had done 10 years in an institution in Maryland. And the question comes up, why wasn't this found out by the prosecution? Why wasn't this found out by the defense or brought up at the trial, which could have shed a new light on that, at least that trial in itself?
But remember, that was only one of the 7 murders that she has confessed to committing. Terry Humphreys is the daughter of Dick Humphreys. I think he was the 6th of Aileen's victims. Her dad had been a police chief and a child abuse investigator. He was murdered less than 2 days after celebrating his 35th wedding anniversary. Terry, she had a rough childhood. Does it make her actions vis-a-vis your father any more understandable?
I don't have a father anymore. The way Aileen Wuornos murdered my father was more than cruel and inhumane. I don't care how she was raised or what kind of family life she had or what she didn't have. It doesn't justify the murder of my father.
Steve Glazer is the current attorney for Aileen Wuornos. He was hired in some ways to ensure that her case would not be appealed. Steve, she told me time and time again that she wants to die now.
It's a sad thing that she does want to die.
And that's okay with you? You'll represent that point of view?
I don't believe in the death penalty, Geraldo. I think it should never be used, especially in this country where you can be in one state, commit a crime, and not have to worry about the death penalty. You cross the wrong state line, and there you go. We should have uniform laws.
Even in the case of a serial murderer, 7 dead men, you don't think that she deserves the death penalty?
I don't believe in the death penalty. What I'm here for is to tell you that her message, I'm here for her message. Her message is that she has the right to control her own destiny. She has the right to control her own death. Now, why should we sit down for the next 10 or 15 years in the state of Florida, go through trial after trial after trial, spend millions of taxpayers' dollars for the same result? She does not want it, so she's asked me to do everything I can to make sure that these cases do not come back on appeal.
She wants to die.
She wants to die.
Meet finally Vanessa. Vanessa works admittedly as a prostitute, usually right here in and around New York City. She says she knows all too well how common violence is in her line of work. Remember, Aileen Wuornos claims that those homicides, those 7 murders, were justified because she was in the process of being raped or assaulted. Now, Vanessa, have you ever been raped in your profession?
Attempted rapes, attempted kidnaps, dragged down the street at 35 miles an hour, yes.
Beaten, never beaten?
Stabbed 2 inches from my heart and had my lung punctured, spent 3 weeks in the hospital.
How do you protect yourself?
It's basically the element of surprise, Geraldo. That is what keeps me alive, the element of surprise.
What is that you're holding there?
It's something I'd never leave home without, sort of like American Express. I mean, let's put it this way. If someone's attacking you and they think that you're some timid little bimbo and you pull out an ice pick, I think they'll probably tend to think twice, you know what I mean? But if you're standing there totally unarmed with nothing but stockings and heels on, there's a really good chance that you're going to get really messed up.
If you had a gun?
Wouldn't carry one. No need for that. These men are not vicious people, basically. If they think that you can be harassed and beaten up, they will do it. But if they think that you're just as equally as sick and perverted as they are, they're going to back up and go back to the Lincoln Tunnel where they come from.
Aileen Wuornos, the woman who is probably the first convicted female serial killer in American history, the woman convicted in the murders of 7 men. It's her story that is our focus today. We'll be right back. There is no disputing the fact that Lee Wuornos' childhood was the stuff of nightmares. She was born to unwed. She was born to unwed teenagers herself, right? Her father committed suicide in jail. She was abandoned by her mom at the age of 6 months. Her grandparents adopted her after her grandmother discovered her in an attic covered with flies. She was physically and possibly sexually abused by her grandfather, a man who also later committed suicide. As Dawn told us earlier, Aileen was probably raped at the age of 12 or 13, became pregnant, gave up that baby for adoption. So we pick up this twisted tale from there.
How old were you when you hit the streets then, Aileen?
I was 16 when I left Michigan, and I was 4 years on the road across the United States. I traveled across the United States 7 times in 1 year and everything. And
when did you get to Florida?
When I was 20 years old, and I stayed in Daytona ever since I was 20.
And were you prostituting that whole time? Is that how you
No.
paid the bills?
No, I had regular jobs until I got that armed robbery charge, which I didn't mean to rob the store. I was out to blow my brains out because I was in love with this guy real bad, and he was dumping me. And the lady in the store saw the gun, and she thought I was going to rob the store. She just started freaking out.
So were you convicted of armed robbery?
Yeah, he didn't want to give me any sentence, but I had a gun on me, so he had to give me 3 years. And when I got out, I went to Maryland, and this guy that I met through a correspondence here, he turned out to be a real weirdo, and I left him, and then I met Tony, this girl. He told me she was a lesbian, and since I was having so many problems with men, I decided, let me try it with a woman.
So you began a lesbian relationship.
Yeah, I fell really in love with her because we were very compatible. But I wasn't interested in the sex part, because I wasn't even a lesbian. But because I could be compatible with her, I agreed to go ahead with the sex acts. Mm-hmm. And I found out that it was pretty nice, it was all right. But my main concern was being compatible with somebody and sharing my love and sharing myself with them.
So you start with Tony. Okay. Were you then at the same time prostituting?
No. I was working a regular job, aluminum siding, putting up aluminum siding and stuff. But then I lost that job, worked for a shrimper. He was having sex with me, but he was constantly having sex with me, not paying me my money. So one day I decided to write some, because I worked for him for like 5 weeks and he didn't pay me my money. So I decided to write up some checks. And So I went to the bank, tried to cash it. I got busted. They said it was a forged check and all this jazz. So I went to jail, and they
You
found...
went to jail again. So
Yeah.
the first one was armed robbery, then forged
then the forged checks. They're trumping the charges on.
How much
to
time?
give me 8 to 10 years in prison. I ran. I said, forget it, I'm running. And when I ran, that's when I turned into a prostitute.
I see. And how many
And I would
customers
work-
would you have in the typical day?
It wasn't just customers, there was a lot of cars involved. Going throughout the day, meeting so many people, I would say I went in and out of vehicles without sexual contact now. I'd say 35, 40, maybe 50 cars a day.
And how many would you find a successful business arrangement?
And I'd meet at least anywhere from 3 to 6.
What was the going rate at that time?
Well, I charged 30 for 35 straight, 40 for half and half, and 100 an hour, and I'd get about 10 customers a month for 100 an hour, and I had mostly they were interested in, and that only took a very short time, a couple minutes, and so it was easy to make money very quickly, get back out of the car, get on the road, and make some more.
Dawn, do you still feel sorry for her when she describes an armed robbery charge, forged checks, and then admittedly becoming a very busy prostitute working the highways of Florida?
I feel sorry for her from when she was a child. Now, I haven't seen her while she was doing all this. You guys refer to her as Lee. I know her as Aileen. And since she's been in jail, yeah, I do. I feel real sorry for her. She explained all that in her letters, how that happened.
What about the
Actually.
7 victims? Do you feel sorry for them?
Yes, I do. My brother was murdered, so I know what it feels like.
Vanessa, can you in any way, shape, or form understand a prostitute murdering 7 of her clients and then claiming it was justifiable?
No, I believe she lost her grip on reality. There's no need for that. These men basically are they're more scared of you than you are of them. Now, of course, there's always going to be an exception to that rule, but no. I could never be pushed to that point.
Richard Mallory was certainly an exception to that rule, wasn't he, Brian?
Yes, he was. And if you take a totality of the circumstances that involved both Richard Mallory and Aileen Wuornos' past with the abuse she endured and the things that happened as she grew up, and put them together, you might be able to at least understand her psyche, where she felt she needed to kill, at least in that particular instance. Not saying that it was right.
Yeah, there's 7 dead people. That's a lot of justifying, if you know what I mean.
Well,
one time, maybe, second time, the 3rd, the 4th, the 5th, the 6th, the 7th.
Well, she claimed self-defense on the first case, which is the one that went to trial, which it's possible that it triggered some sort of mechanism inside her whereby when she felt threatened, whether she was or not, if she felt threatened, she would attack.
We got some questions, yes.
Sorry, are you just saying that you're just condoning the one murder that she committed, that the other 6?
I'm not here to judge her by any means. What I'm saying is that everyone in this country is entitled to due process of law. And that includes having a fair trial and bringing about evidence which could back up your claim, for example, in her case, self-defense.
But Steve,
That
as
evidence wasn't
I
brought
understand it, she refused to participate in her own defense after the first or second case.
That's right. After the Richard Mallory case, where she had public defenders handling her case, she spent 2 weeks in the courtroom. She saw all the evidence being presented, things that were not allowed to be presented. And after she lost the Richard Mallory case and was found guilty and then sentenced to death, she lost all hope in the rest of the cases. And that's where I first came in to defend her. She had public defenders originally.
I wonder if she sought any help before whether she knew she was doing wrong, whether she would look for consultation and help.
I asked her about therapy, and she said absolutely not, because there's nothing wrong with her. She says that if she was, she really says this, if she was crazy, Aileen told me, she would have killed far more than 7 men, because as she told us earlier, she would see between 35 and 40 men a day and would have sex for money with between 3 and 6 of them every day. And she only killed 7. She only killed 7. Yes, Vanessa?
Excuse me, but once you give up on your own defense, that's like you've given up on your own self-preservation. There's a sign right there that the woman needs psychiatric help and therapy and caring and loving, not to be incarcerated. And the fact that she refused therapy, The first thing you have to do when you have a problem, whether it's drugs, whether it's whatever it is, you have to admit that you have a problem. Otherwise, you can't get no help.
Do you have a problem working in your business, Vanessa?
I have bodyguards, and I have a total different mentality of this woman, and there's nothing in the world that could cause me to kill someone.
Do you feel any remorse that you're a prostitute?
No, not at all. I believe that, number one, my profession is the oldest profession on this planet, and I'm like a public service.
Oh, I thought talk show host was... Oh, that's you. You're right. You're right.
Say that again?
Just kidding.
No. I was here before plumbers. I was here before talk show hosts. Okay? And, I mean...
Wait. And number two?
And number two, you just have to have the right... Look, the rape and divorce rate in this country would skyrocket to the point of no return if I was not out there. I mean, where do guys go when they want to lick someone's boots? You're kind of like a marriage counselor, you mean? Yes.
Okay.
I have guys come discuss their marriage problems. I have guys come discuss their business problems. I mean, where do you go when you want to lick someone's boots? You can't go to a newspaper and get this service rendered.
This is very true, but we're getting off the point. The point is Aileen Wuornos, and her story continues after this break. Is your marriage suffering from the sexual blues? Well, Jessica Hahn's new Playboy video may be just the thing to rekindle the fire in your bedroom, spicing up your sex life. Next, Geraldo. This is a profile of Aileen Wuornos, the convicted murderer of 7, the I-75 prostitute killer, now on death row, a woman who now tells the world she wants to die. Yes.
The question is, the chief, the police chief, was he Eileen's John? Was he a customer? Was he a John? Or was he a innocent bystander? Or was he on the case to, you know, to bust her or something? Which was it?
Former chief of police who had picked up Miss Wuornos while she was hitchhiking. And that's how they encountered each other. And one thing led to another. I guess she said, you know, told her the prices.
That was Terry's dad.
Yes.
Terry was your...
sex involved.
You don't know, you weren't there. I'm not here to...
You weren't there either.
You're absolutely right, and I'm not trying to say anything bad about your father, but the facts are he picked her up.
How do you know that?
If he did, ma'am, it's not a crime.
I'm sure, I agree, but how do you know? How do you know he picked her up?
Let's, you know, I think it would be useful if we go to the interview and go through her crimes, because she talks about all 7 of her victims, and one of them, of course, Terry, is your father. But she starts with Richard Mallory. Aileen claims that she killed that first victim, Richard Mallory, when he tried to rape her, and that was the event, in her mind at least, that triggered off this, this murder spree. But she says that wasn't her first experience with rape.
Had you been raped prior to Mallory?
Yes.
How many times? Any idea?
I'd say the year before Mallory, at least 3 or 4.
They push you around, they hurt you?
Yeah, how about punch in the mouth, or how about slap in the face, and how about pulling my hair and forcing me down and forcing their penis in my mouth, ramming it down my throat and everything. It was rape. I had a double-barrel shotgun up against my head begging for my life. I had a knife against my throat. I had one of those razors that cut carpets and stuff to the side of my neck and everything.
Did you feel like killing any of those guys?
I didn't have a gun. I was begging for my life. I was on my knees with a double-barrel shotgun begging for my life.
What made you get the gun?
Because the way I had to beg for my life and everything, I said, I can't, you know, one of these days these guys are going to kill me.
Tell me about Mallory. What did Mallory do? He started to strangle you?
Yeah, and then he pulled me back toward him and had me kind of laying on the seat where my legs were up like this, you know, and he's choking me, and he said, you know, that you better do what I say or I'll kill you right now, you bitch, and I'll kill you now. You later don't matter to me, your body will still be warm. I've killed other sluts like you, and it don't make no difference to me because I've done it before, and stuff like this.
And how'd you manage to reach your gun?
I started fighting with him, and he slapped me in the face, and I grabbed his arm over here, and he hits me again with this arm. I'm grabbing his arms, and there was a lot of arms flinging and everything. And finally, he was choking me, and I spit in his face. He got back up and he said, "Boy, you're going to be a lot of fun, bitch." I fell on my back and I kind of like fell to the floor, grabbing for the gun, and like my back and my shoulder was on the floor. And when he was coming at me, he was reaching towards me, and I shot twice as fast as I could.
Shot him twice as he leaned over you in the front seat? Was that the only time you shot him?
No. When I shot him twice, he started coming back at me again. I shot him one more time.
Did it become easier to kill after Mallory?
I didn't want to kill anybody. I didn't.
But as an option, did it become more accessible to you after Mallory? I mean,
No,
was it
I
like a
felt really-
taboo was lifted in some way?
No, I felt really kind of bad about the situation, but then I felt like, well, to me, I felt the guy deserved it.
But Terry, did your father deserve it?
Would your father deserve it if it were the roles were reversed?
We'll be right back. We'll talk about all the victims and talk more with our guests. Our audience here, Aileen Wuornos, the killer of 7, an exclusive jailhouse interview. Aileen Wuornos, the convicted killer of 7. Thanks, everybody. Yes.
Okay, I have a question for her lawyer. Steve, what would have happened had you not stepped in? If the public defenders were still defending her, where would she be today?
She'd more than likely be waiting to go to trial because her public defenders, Miss Wuornos wanted to plead to get this over with a while ago. She wasn't allowed to because her public defenders would not go that way with the case. That's when
they
I
wanted
came
to try
in.
their best as attorneys, didn't they?
But you see, they have a philosophy that we don't care what the client wants, we're going to do it our way anyway.
Doesn't it bother your conscience that you're going to help send a woman to her death?
It has to, but the main thing is I'm doing this for her. No one else would do this for her.
Come on, you're doing this for her.
No one else would do it for her. She could not get a lawyer.
Why don't you get a gun and shoot her?
Because then I'd be in the same position she'd be in.
Why don't you bring a gun and let her shoot herself?
I can't get, that's contraband, can't get it into prison. The point is,
But isn't it
Geraldo,
the same?
It's not the same. Here's a person
Advise her to jump off a roof or something. Why? I mean,
she can't jump off a roof.
How can a man who doesn't believe in the death penalty be the cheerleader for an execution?
I am not the cheerleader for an execution. I am doing what she wants, what my client wants me to do.
What is that, to put her out of the misery routine or something?
And if she wants to be out of her misery,
Remember
then
that
she has
film,
the
They
right.
Shoot Horses, don't they? Yeah.
She has the right.
Okay.
I wanted to ask the girlfriend, what type of punishment do you think she should get, if she should get any?
She's getting the punishment for what she done. I mean, the judicial system and the tabloids, everything's already done it on the first one, so why should she even bother fighting anymore? Actually, he has a point on that one. No matter what, you guys aren't going to believe her. She's had a death penalty since the day she was born.
But you don't justify with what she did.
No,
though.
I don't justify murder. I told you my brother was murdered.
Okay.
You know, I don't justify that.
That's Terry, of course. Terry Humphreys, the daughter of Lee Wuornos' 6th victim. Now, I know it's not easy for Terry to hear the confessed murder of her beloved father to talking about this awful event, but I had to ask Ms. Wuornos how she felt about all 7 of the men she had gunned down. We saw the first one, here are the next 6.
Do you feel any remorse for the Spears or Karskadin? Do you feel
Well, that's what I'm
badly?
trying to tell you. I do have remorse now.
What about for the missionary? His family says he wasn't looking for a prostitute. Is that true?
Yes, he was. He accepted $30 per head. He might not have been looking for a prostitute. He picked me up hitchhiking, and I told him I was a prostitute, and he accepted $30 per head.
He gave you $30, and you
He didn't give me any money.
Did he scare you?
Yeah.
I mean, did you feel it necessary to kill him?
I feel like, in a sense, what he was doing, yeah.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, you search your soul now, your newly religious soul, it was necessary to kill the 65-year-old missionary?
The way he made me so mad at the time, and what he was doing at that time, yes. I mean,
but he didn't
now,
threaten your life.
I'm talking about, okay, I'm talking about then.
Right.
Now, if I could turn the hands of time around and do this over, I know I wouldn't kill him.
You wouldn't. He's one you would
But-
not kill.
Yeah, I would not kill him.
So you feel sorry
I
for
wish
killing
he
him.
would have told me he was a missionary. He didn't tell me.
How many times did you shoot him?
I don't remember.
What about this Boris, Eugene
Burress, I think his name is.
What a Burress? A bad guy?
He had a knife, he had a switchblade and a camouflage knife, and he tried to rape me while we had the blanket in front of the truck.
And what about Dick Humphreys?
Humphrey, oh God. That creep told me he was a cop for Wildwood and showed me this badge.
His family is going to be in the studio. His wife complains that you tortured him, shot him in the gut, made him die hard.
No. We struggled with the gun. I mean, when I shot him first, when he was coming at me with the handcuffs in the billy club, after I got out, he put me in the back seat, shut the door, and told me, wait right here, he'll be right back. And that's when I shot him in the shoulder. And he hit the ground on his knee, and I said, you better stay right there. You come any closer to me, man, I'll shoot you again. And he just got up, he said, you son of a bitch, and got up and started coming at me. I shot him about 3 or 4 times, I think.
What about Antonio?
I just knew I had to shoot.
Did you have to shoot Gino Antonio also?
Antonio. Oh, yes, okay, I remember him.
Did he try to rape you?
He pretended to be a police officer. Now, I wasn't even going to touch him. I wasn't even going to kill him. I went and got my gun, and he was coming out with a darn flashlight in his hand and stuff, and I just went and shot.
How many times did you shoot him?
And I think the report said 4.
In the beginning, you were reluctant to use violence against violence. Did it become easier as it went along? Did the killings become easier?
The killings didn't come easy, because that hurts. I didn't want to kill anybody. I wouldn't hurt anybody. Man, I wouldn't hurt no one. I'd help them, if anything. But when you're coming at me with full assault, full intent to do bodily harm to me, possibly kill me, I don't know. I can't stop you and read your mind, you know.
You feel strongly that you wanted me to know, know in some detail why you kill these people. You don't want me to think you, it seems to me, Lee. You don't want me to think you're a cold-blooded killer.
Because I'm not. I'm not a cold-blooded killer.
Look right in there. See the camera in there? They're the families of the 7 men. Let's take Mallory aside. Mallory was a son of a bitch with a terrible violent past. There's 6 guys and the families in there. Do you have anything to say to them? Just look right there. I'm not even here now. There they are.
I wish you weren't sexually defunct and deranged, and that I just think that a lot of men ought to keep their penises in their pants and their wallets in their back pockets and quit supporting prostitution, because you are the ones that prey, you are the ones that lure.
How do you like the label of America's first female serial killer?
I'm pissed, because it's not true.
But you did kill 7 men.
It's a series of men killed, but it wasn't serial killing style.
Okay, so that's her explanation why she shouldn't be called a female serial killer, but I wonder how Terry Humphreys feels about her explanation about her dad.
Everything she says, nothing makes sense. She says that she wouldn't hurt anybody, and that she's, on the other hand, she says she's sorry. Going back to sex, there wasn't any sex involved in my dad's murder. They cut him. They did an autopsy on my dad. They wouldn't release his body for over a week. They cut him from stem to stern. There wasn't any semen there, anywhere.
Your reaction to just hearing those words from her?
I just hope this man can do what he is set out to do and save us all the grief and the heartache, because I live with this every day. I miss my dad more than anything in the whole world.
So you think Aileen deserves an electrocution, a quick death?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
We'll be right back. Okay, I want to get some audience reaction to Aileen Wuornos. I've asked the members of the audience who want to give their reaction just to stand up. Yeah.
Help should have been there a long time ago.
In her case, okay? Yes, sir.
She was venting some of the hurt encountered during her childhood. That's the way I feel.
I think that she shouldn't be able to die. I think she should have to suffer. It's the easy way out.
Interesting. Yes, sir.
There is no justification for murder. It's as simple as that. And what difference does it make whether he's a missionary or not? He's a human being.
Okay.
I think her abuse led to her acting like she did. I think she could maybe be saved with some therapy instead of the electric chair.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Quick.
I don't think she set out to do it, but she should be killed for what, she killed them. She should have set to death, too.
Yes.
I agree with the lady. The death penalty is the easy way out.
Oh, okay. Yes.
I think if she was found guilty and she wants a death penalty, she should get it.
Prostitution should be banned, and I don't think she should die. I'm against the death penalty, and I don't understand why there are not more reforms in prison. There should be more, you know.
I think if she underwent some serious therapy, she may change her mind.
Therapy?
To me, I feel she just did it for defending herself.
Okay. Yeah, last one.
If she did it once, why didn't she get help then?
All right. It's interesting. I'm sure there's a different reaction to Aileen Wuornos because she's a woman than if a man had killed 7. I doubt if the audience would have been so therapy-oriented if the guy had been the murderer.
Geraldo?
Aileen Wuornos, hold on, Steve. Aileen Wuornos is understandably a woman without many friends. She has little hope of ever being released. Her life has been obviously painful for herself, for her many victims' families. What then should happen now?
Do you then expect the death penalty?
I'm not afraid of dying. I love the Lord, and matter of fact, I want to die now. I've been through so much hell in this world, and so much. The people refuse to listen. The public refuses to care because of prostitution.
Why don't you say, I'm sorry. I'm sorry I killed those men.
I am sorry I killed those men now. Now that I'm into religion, I mean, I'm sorry it happened. I wish it never would have happened. But same token, you all got to look at the facts that I killed in self-defense and quit listening to these lying cops.
But do you understand why they say that you don't show any remorse?
Because why should I? The cops made me so mad at all the lying and everything, I can't show any remorse.
But deep down, here, I'm not a cop. I want you to say you're sorry. Say you're sorry to the innocent families.
The innocent families. Those families aren't innocent.
Why
Those
not?
men aren't innocent. I'm not giving in. Those men are not innocent.
Why don't you want to live for Ty, if you love her so?
Tyra has her own life now to lead on. And I don't think, I mean, I would love to be back with Ty and everything, but I don't believe she'd ever come back to me. I don't know. I don't want to live. Why are you lingering me on death row? You state that execution should be the next day then. Good. Let me go.
Let her go. We have to go. Be right back in 2 minutes. Speak Up America. We want to hear your comments and show ideas. Give us a call at 1-900-SPEAK-UP. Let us know what you're thinking. We'll record your message to play in a future broadcast. We may even call you to be a guest on a show. So call 1-900-SPEAK-UP. Don't forget, the call costs $1. We'll be right back. Aileen Wuornos, the convicted killer of 7, our focus, yes.
I have a question for her attorney. If she truly believes she's innocent by defense and that she's been railroaded, how come she hasn't used her appeal? I mean, as her attorney, aren't you supposed to advise her of things like that?
Yes. The appeal is automatic in the state of Florida. So whether or not she wants to appeal or not, it's already being done automatically.
And you're trying to fight it?
No. What I did was when we ended up, Lee changed the plea to guilty in these cases, and we had a penalty phase decide recommendation. Those things have been done. They're going to be looked at by the Supreme Court. And what I did for Lee basically was this. She said, Steve, make sure this case doesn't come back. So I read and read and read, and I found out what makes cases come back, what issues come back. So I tried to cover all those issues in the beginning so that there are no grounds for appeal.
Vanessa, how long does a person think about staying in the career you're in? Like 10 years, 20 years, or?
How long have you been at it,
not
first of all?
popular anymore.
Until you're not popular anymore, that's all
Yeah,
I'm
there you
gonna
go.
say? So when your John say your time is up, that's when your time is up?
You have to think about your future and start thinking about you have to do something else outside of that.
Evelina Giobbi's on the phone now. She's the founder of a group that helps prostitutes quit the business, a group called Whisper. Evelina, we have Vanessa in our studio. She is an unredeemed prostitute. She is proud of her profession and wants to stay in it as long as there is demand. On the other hand, you hear Aileen Wuornos' tragic tale, especially tragic not only for her, but for her 7 victims and their families. First of all, comment, is prostitution at play here as part of what's happening here?
Well, absolutely what's going on is about prostitution. And to be as brief as possible, women in prostitution are commonly sexually assaulted, raped, battered, and robbed by customers. A study we did here in Minnesota of 20 women, which reflects other studies around the country, showed 3/4 reported assault. More than half were raped by a customer. Almost 80% were beaten by customers. 3/4 of them were robbed by customers. A study presented to the Gender Bias Study Commission of the Supreme Court of Florida showed that in police sting operations, often customers go to prostitutes and they're armed with guns. So I think what Lee is talking about is not uncommon, although the general public is not aware of the amount of abuse. This is not only against street prostitutes. Just recently in the Twin Cities, a brothel, a sauna, if you will, was broken into by 4 armed men. They kidnapped a woman, held her for 8 hours, and gang raped her. So what we're looking at in Lee's case, or what we hear her saying, is that she adequately used deadly force to defend herself against a real or perceived threat. Her lived experience led her to believe that it was a real threat. And
but how do we know that? Terry Humphrey says her dad wasn't even looking for sex.
You know, I think it's so sad for Terry Humphrey to have to face both the loss of her father and the possibility that he sexually exploited another woman. Unfortunately, what the stats show us around the country is the average American John is white, middle class, middle age, he's married, he has children. This is the dad next door. And we'll never know if Chief Humphreys, in fact, did attack Aileen, although the stats tell us that it's quite possible, or if she perceived it in the same way, Geraldo, that a Vietnam vet who suffers from post-traumatic stress disorder may perceive a threat, when in fact it just triggers something. We also know that right now that there's a serial murderer at large in Florida. 8 women are dead. 8 women in prostitution are dead. These are unsolved murders.
Yeah, usually it is the prostitute who is the victim of the serial murderer rather than...
Eileen's fears are not unfounded. Close to 2,000 men a year used her in prostitution. So to say 3 to 6 a day, that 7 of them may have sexually assaulted her, fits with the stats that are in there.
Okay, Aileen, I've got to take a break. Stay tuned, folks. We'll be right back. Thanks, everybody. We just got a hot flash. On the phone right now is a guy named Tom Evans. Tom could have been a witness for the defense, but they never called him. Tom, you're a trucker. You rode around. We're almost out of time here, but you rode around with Aileen Wuornos for how long?
I rode around with Aileen Wuornos from May the 2nd of 1990 to May the 10th of 1990.
So you had more than a week together. Did she seem crazy to you?
No.
Did she have a gun on her then?
No, she did not.
Did she ever try anything with you?
No, she never did.
Why were you two together for that week or more?
Well, it's a long story. We don't have much time, so I ain't going to take up your time. I'll just tell you what I know.
Why didn't you testify on her behalf?
Beg pardon?
Why didn't you testify on her behalf?
Well, I tried to. I tried to for 2 or 3 months before the trial, but somehow, in other words, in the middle of the case or something like that, the district attorney struck my name from the list.
Do you think she was railroaded?
I know she was railroaded.
Would you testify if she had a retrial?
I sure will.
But you know she wants to die now. What's your comment on that?
Well, Lee, if you're hearing my voice, honey, hang in there and hold your head up and have faith in Jesus Christ. He'll take care of things.
I want to thank all our guests and thank you folks at home for watching. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.